And I said, why don't you stay and get a good night's sleep and leave in the morning? And it's raining and you're going to be tired. Why don't you just stay? And he said, we'll be okay. I said, no, seriously, I'm a mom. I don't like the thought of you guys. He said, this is our life. This is what we do all the time. We're all sleep deprived. We're always stressed out. We're always hungry. I said, yeah, but if you leave in the morning, how long does it take you to get there? I remember arguing with him about it. And he's like, just relax. It's okay. So we hugged goodbye right there. And I said, well, I'll see you here, there, in the air.
Welcome to Between the Songs podcast. This is a podcast that explores the songs and the words of Rich Mullins and his music. Welcome back. My name is Chris Marchand. I'm one of the co-hosts here, and I'm joined with my other host. Say hello.
Joe Cook. Hey, how's it going, Chris?
I'm doing okay. Now, for people that are on the other end of this thing, they're probably wondering, where have these two schmucks been? It's been a while. So yes, we've been on hiatus, and over the last couple of years, I get emails every now and then saying, "Hey, are you guys going to put out more episodes?" And so the answer is yes, because you're listening to this right now. We have a reason today, and so let me get to that first, which is a friend of ours, a friend of the podcast and in our own lives, Andrew Montonera, has released a documentary. It's called The Work You Began. Joe, what is the basic description of this documentary? Like, what would the IMDb description of it be?
Well, the full title is The Work You Began, The Last Days of Rich Mullins. And that's pretty much right there what it focuses on. This is a real look at the last few weeks of Rich's life, in particular when he was staying with the Cruz family in Elgin, Illinois. He was up there with Mitch McVicker and the Kid brothers, and they were recording what turned out to be Mitch's self-titled debut album. And also during that time is when Rich recorded the demos for what became the Jesus record. And this documentary looks at that particular time and place in Rich's life and talks to the people that were around him during those final weeks.
So here's what's fascinating about this documentary is we have a young man, Andrew. He's not Scorsese yet, right? He's not the Coen brothers yet. He's a young man. He's graduating from college. And a few years ago, when we were having our 20th anniversary Window Rock tribute out in was it Arizona or New Mexico? I never know what's out there.
We were staying in New Mexico. Yeah, because that's where I lived, just across the border in New Mexico. Then you go half a mile down the road and you're in Window Rock, Arizona, which is where we held the concert.
Which is where the concert was. And so Andrew was talking about this idea at that time, and he was even starting to compile interviews. He interviewed Eric Hauck out there. And what I'm trying to comment on is where the germ of these ideas come from. Isn't it interesting? It was this little seedling of an idea in his head, and it took him a number of years. He did a GoFundMe and raised a little bit of money, and
he had just started filming for the documentary a month before that concert. It was in August of that year, and so he had just started. A year before that, it was the summer of 2016. And you'll remember this, Chris. My family and I, we were traveling across country, and that was the summer I met you. I came and you interviewed me for Post Consumer Reports. After that, we drove up to, we drove to Milwaukee and we saw Paul McCartney, and then from there we went down to Lake Zurich and we stayed with Andrew and his family. And while we were there, Andrew, he surprised me and took me over to meet the Cruzes, which was really cool. For me at the time, I felt so like, oh my gosh, these people are just thinking, who is this guy, this random guy that, you know, Andrew's bringing over to meet them. They couldn't have been nicer. And we spent an afternoon on their patio, just sharing Rich Mullins stories. And I think we sang a couple songs. They were just a really wonderful family. And and at that point, I don't think Andrew had even had the idea yet to do a documentary with him, but you could tell his friendship with them was growing, and he had already known them for probably a year before I met them. He also took me over, and we saw the church where the Jesus demos were recorded too, and met the pastor there, because it's now actually, when we went, it was under construction, but it's now a church that is, you know, in operation.
Yeah, so the funny kind of what you're saying actually is you got to see the documentary before it was even filmed, meaning Andrew kind of took you on a little tour, which is essentially what you see in the film itself. You fully immerse in the Cruz family. You get to hear from, I think, everybody in the family, and then you get to go to the church a little bit and see what at least what it looks like nowadays. And so yeah. So you actually got the pre-tour, you know,
it actually there's a brief clip in the documentary, because it is an active church now, and there's footage of it now, the way it looks right now. But there's actually a quick shot of the church when it was still under construction that he took during our visit. He took that footage and he used it in the documentary, so which was kind of cool.
Okay, so really quickly, we're going to talk a little bit about this before we get into. So we're interviewing Andrew today. We're giving him a chance to talk about the film. You interviewed him and talked with him. But before we do that, I want to say that it's available on YouTube for free. So this is not the kind of thing. It's not up on a streaming service, and it's on your Ragamuffin Archive YouTube page. And guess what? I watched the documentary on my TV, because on my Amazon Fire Stick, I have a YouTube app or whatever, and so I actually watched it on TV. I didn't watch on my phone. If you can stream YouTube on your TV, you can watch it like a normal movie, and it's out there. So go check out the Ragamuffin Archive page and check out. Type in The Work You Began. I literally just typed in The Work You Began, and it came right up. So that was nice. I don't know how the algorithms work, but it worked for me.
Yeah, and it looks great. I mean, it's in high def, and as of this, we're taping this right now. It's Tuesday morning, so it's only been up for about 5 days. As of this morning, there's over 6,000 views. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Decent amount for just this independent filmmaker who just graduated from college this past year. So it's pretty good, right?
Yeah, not too shabby.
Yeah. So that's the first thing, is just aware of where you can find it. Before we get into talking about a little bit about some reflection on this film itself, we owe our audience an explanation, and we don't mean to go. You're not listening to this podcast to hear about everything about our lives, but we just thought, okay, yeah, what's been going on? Why haven't you heard from this podcast? Joe, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. We sort of, I mean, obviously it's been, in fact, it'll be 3 years this month since we released our last episode. So this is it's an impressive hiatus. I don't think probably anybody listening right now actually expected this episode to happen. So you're welcome. But no, we sort of, not that anybody would remember, but I think we touched on a little bit about this a few years ago in those last couple of shows. That for me personally, I definitely, after we did the Window Rock concert, hit a little bit of a point of what I would call Rich Mullins burnout, that I just needed a break from the whole thing, Not that in any way, I mean, it was a wonderful experience, but it was a very draining experience. And then a lot just happened at the same time in my personal life. We were still out on the mission field in Window Rock, and there was a lot going on out there that we had to deal with. And then in the midst of that, you and I had a lot of conversations about the direction of the podcast itself, and we kind of had come to this decision that we were sort of abandoning our original, concept for the podcast, where it would be more of a free form, just kind of discussion about Rich's records. We decided we wanted to do something that was a little more professional. We wanted to do something that was maybe more documentary in execution. And so that was obviously always going to take a lot more work, a lot more research. And so
there are several kinds of formats that people can do for a podcast. We could just do an interview podcast, and we have interviews that we've done with people that are in Rich Mullins' life, and we could give those to you.
Yeah, we have a number of interviews nobody's heard.
Yeah, we do, and that would be great. And another kind of podcast that people can do is just two guys talking about the things they love. And that's what we're doing right now. In this probably, this intro is going to be maybe an hour and a half long, I think. We'll see how long it goes for. But all of which is to say, we have ideas of, Joe and I, we've had ideas like fun little podcasts. We could have discussions, and those podcasts exist, and they can be entertaining. People talking about movies or music, and it's just the people, two friends in a sense. So all of which is to say, we regrouped, and in the midst of creative regrouping, in some ways we came to realize, boy, this is a lot of work, and we're going to do this incrementally. But in the midst of that, life just happens. So let me sum up. I'll sum up. This won't be fully satisfying, but that we do have ideas of places we want to take this. Currently, we have a few episodes that we're working on in the meantime, but they're not the actual podcast episodes. As a reminder, the basic format of the podcast is we're going to go through each one of Rich Mullins' albums and give some of the background information on those albums, and which we found out we're like, okay, if we're going to do this right, it's going to take a lot of work. We still want to do that, and we're gonna figure out a way to offer that in some way. So just stay tuned on that. And when I say stay tuned, that might mean 3 to 5 years. But hey, we've all just got nothing but time, right?
Yeah, that's the main course, and it may take a while to arrive, but until then, we've got some appetizers that we will be serving.
Yeah, we want to give light to some things that keep happening in the realm of Rich Mullins' work and his life and his work. His life is a story that, in a sense, keeps getting told. So in the midst of that, let's talk a little bit about this film. Really, this could be a whole episode in and of itself, because I have a few things to reflect on, and so I'll offer them here. Here's my first one. In watching the film, it reminded me how absolutely unsatisfying this whole experience has been. and what I mean by that is Andrew's film took us back into that moment where, when I was a teenager in high school, you get the word that your hero has died in a car accident. And by the way, for me, as a reminder, I don't know what anybody remembers, but this happened 45 minutes to an hour away from where I live on a interstate 39. There was a little shrine of flowers and crosses for a time that people you drove by it, and people had put places where the car accident had happened as a way of remembrance and commemoration.
Oh, so did you see that?
I never went there. I never went there. I never did that. I don't know. That wasn't my thing at the time. I don't know. So the whole Rich Mullins story is so unsatisfying. And by the way, listeners, Joe and I going back and forth about this a little bit, and it's a little bit of fun, actually. And, maybe someday this will be a fun podcast episode, which is, hey, do you like the Jesus album demos more, or the Jesus record itself? And we go back and forth, and it's actually a fun debate. I'm more of a Jesus demos guy myself, and Joe is.
I'm team Jesus record.
Yeah, he likes the produced version. But guess what? I think both Joe and I are going to agree that there's something unsatisfying about the whole experience, that even if we prefer the produced record, it still doesn't have Mullins on it very much, little bits here and there. And of course, his mark is all over it. Here's all I want to say about the film. And this is what I would want to encourage people, is it allows us to grieve. That the film allows us to get back into the story and just be okay with being sad that this happened to Mullins. That there's something. Here's what's fascinating about Andrew's documentary is it actually does give us a great finish, because it shows us that there's grace there. Like he met this family. I mean, this family, there's something else. I grew up in a family that we were closed off to everybody, and my parents didn't get along, and they would never, ever have had a Saturday night, hey, let's get together and do music. Like, that was the last thing that was going to happen in my family. And so here Mullins gets put in contact with this gracious, loving, kind people that they open their home. They're giving, they're just trying to be faithful and serve God. And in the midst of that, Mullins receives this little bit of grace. I mean, so there's just something about that. By the way, do you get into that any at all? Like, why Andrew chose the name of the documentary, The Work You Began?
Well, yeah, he discusses it a bit in the interview, why he chose that name, and I'll let him share that. I don't want to give too much away.
That's fine.
But he gives a really, I think, a really eloquent response to that very question, and I think especially when you sit down, and I'm sure that many of the people listening right now have already seen the documentary. If they haven't, they should just probably pause us, go watch it, and then come back. But I think it's pretty clear by the time you get through the end of the film, all the way through the credits, and do stay through the credits. I think the title, and especially the title song, the song that was chosen, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's one of my reflections, is how his story felt so unfinished at the time. And Andrew, through some of the interviews, the reflections that he gave that summer, you get to hear from all these people. I don't know. I mean, Mullins' life is a bit of an enigma. And I'll say this. Here's one thing that stuck out to me in the documentary that I didn't understand as a kid, because he's my hero. And it's just how unhealthy he was. I think as an adult, I'm raising my own kids. I'm trying to take care of my own self in my adulthood. I'm about 2 years younger, I believe, than when Mullins died. He wasn't taking care of himself. He was pushing himself unnecessarily. He was living just, he didn't look good, and everybody knew it.
Yeah, and there's a moment in the film where Claudia Cruz mentions the night that Rich left, the night that he was killed. She pretty much begged him not to leave, because the weather was really terrible and Rich was exhausted and hadn't had enough sleep, and his sort of response was just kind of like, hey, this is our life, this is what we do, and we drive hundreds of miles with very little sleep, and it's just part of what we do, and that that to me was maybe the hardest thing to watch in the film. That was that was heartbreaking. But we know how the story ends. We know what happened. There's obviously, but I think that really has a lot to do with what you were saying, that, there wasn't a lot of self-care going on there. It was and I think maybe that just comes with part of who he was, the servant part of Rich Mullins, them doing the concert at the house. It was, well, you guys have, are taking care of us. What can we do for you? What can we do to give of ourselves to thank you? And it was, no doubt Rich Mullins, for himself didn't need to do another concert,
Right.
But he gave that as this wonderful, precious gift to this family that, that thankfully, due to VHS technology, we'll always have. But that was, Rich giving of himself. And Michael Okafor, very candidly talks about why he wasn't there. It was given as an option to the band members, and he said with the option, he's like, I needed a night off.
And Michael Okafor is still alive.
and
I'm very maudlin, very macabre today.
Yeah, but
I was going to say there's a way to interpret Mullins' statement. This is just our lives. This is just what we do. There's a way for me to read that and go, man, that guy's tough. Like, look at my hero. Look at how bold he is, and he's just living his life. There's a way that I can look up to them and I can put rose-tinged lenses around that. The other side of me goes, man, that's just really stupid. And I can look at it a little bit different. This many years onwards, like I'm old enough now where I could call them out on that and I'd be like, man, stay at their house another night. Just you need a break. And
I could be wrong, but if my memory serves me correctly, the concert he was heading to was a benefit. It was, a favor he was doing to friends in Wichita.
And he was giving. He was truly just giving of himself. And I do want to mention that last concert where I think there's something about that last concert that it represents really the heart of what Mullins was about, in the sense of connecting with people. And like the moment where the Cruz's dad sings Jesus Loves Me, and that really connected with Mullins.
Yeah.
That he was actually, like, over his career, he said it numerous times where he just loves people singing in church because it's not perfect. And that wasn't just a thing that he said. Like, he actually really
believed that.
Really believed.
Yeah.
And so there was something about the closeness of that concert where I saw him that summer too, at Cornerstone, in a big, outdoor amphitheater. And I'll be honest, I felt really just, it was a big, huge concert. It was not intimate. I just saw him far away up on the stage or up on the screen. It was an okay concert is what I'm saying. But to be there in that room with him at that household, that would have been an experience. And to feel the care that he brought to the stories that he told during that concert, that was just a beautiful thing. And in some senses, I feel like that was the essence of what his music and his, I think we can call it ministry, was about.
Yeah, I think there was a certain relaxation in the environment of that concert that you don't see even in, because I didn't see Rich in concert, but I probably got 30 of them up on YouTube, and other Rich concerts that I have had the chance to see, there's something really different and special about it. It's the only house concert of his that I've ever seen.
He was ahead of the curve.
Yeah, he was doing house concerts before house concerts were cool. And but there was just a certain vibe going on that night where I think he was just a little more open and candid than maybe even he normally was in concert. And he was a pretty open guy. There's at one point, for those who have seen it, he sings a song I've never heard him play anywhere else, and that you can very clearly hear in the audio. Got a mixed reaction, but he sings a song essentially about murdering a girl in the woods, which is just really, this bizarre, quirky, unexpected thing that I don't think he would have played at Cornerstone. You know what I mean?
This is the first time I ever heard that guitar. And it's kind of a love song. Well, it goes. Mary, you was a fine girl, but we went too far out of town. So I shot you in the back of my car, and I buried you so you couldn't be found. Mary, you was a fine girl.
Nice song.
Oh, yeah. You actually claimed it?
So he certainly had I think a comfort with this family to open up maybe one of the darker sides of him,
Yeah.
to them. And I think that gets touched, a little bit, with, in the documentary with the kids talking about him swearing in their living room.
Yeah, there's that kind of stuff, which is interesting. And what's funny to me too about, I think it's Caleb, he was just basically like, I was trying to impress him for a whole week. And I was so stupid. And I loved that he said that, because that's what I would have done. I would have been frozen for a week. I would have been like, I don't know what I would. I didn't. Yeah, I bet Caleb, you did a good job if you're listening to this.
And his brother Peter was the polar opposite.
Oh, he did. Yeah. He was oblivious a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, one last thing I want to say, which I think maybe as Mullins fans that I appreciated about the documentary, was Andrew in some ways was telling the story more fully than it's ever been told about the Jesus record. And so you get little snippets throughout the whole film about, this song was written here, or here's a version of this song, or here's him talking a little bit about one of the songs, or even drawing back in the catalog. And so as much as this is like the final weeks of Mullins's life, it's also like, hey, here's a little more of the story that you've never heard about how the Jesus record came together. Yeah,
well, one of the things that you take away from it is that I certainly didn't know definitively was that the last song Rich ever wrote was All the Way to Kingdom Come.
Didn't know what love was till he came, and he gave love a face, and he gave love a name, and he gave love away like the sky gives the rain and sun. Well, we were looking for heroes, we came looking for the lost, we were searching for glory, and he showed us the cross. Now we know what love is, 'cause he loves us. The way to kingdom come, on the way.
I in my research had it narrowed down between Hard to Get and All the Way to Kingdom Come, but we find out it was definitely the latter. And take with that what you will. With that information, but it's just for me, it's very interesting to know. This is the last song he wrote on Earth, and I don't know, makes that song just a little bit more special to me.
Yeah. So let's hear from Andrew now. Let's hear your conversation with him, and let's see what the filmmaker can unpack for us, and tell us some more about his film.
This week, after more than 3 years of hard work, a brand new documentary is finally being released. It's called The Work You Began, The Last Days of Rich Mullins. The film takes an in-depth look at the final weeks of Rich's life and tells the story of the Cruz family. Of course, the family that Rich stayed with in Elgin, Illinois, as he, along with Mark Robertson, produced Mitch McVicker's self-titled debut album. Joining me today is the director, editor of the film, my dear friend, Andrew Montonera. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, first off, let me congratulate you, man, because I've watched the film twice now, and it is a beautiful documentary, and I know from firsthand, from kind of, watching you along this journey the last few years, but also I can tell just from seeing it that this was that you poured your heart and soul into this thing. So congratulations, man. It's incredible that this film is finally released.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It was a labor of love, and I'm glad that it's finally done and being put out there for people to see.
All right, so allow me to set the stage for a moment. So like most Rich Mullins fans, until about a decade ago, I was not familiar with the Cruz family, knew nothing of their story until this video popped up on YouTube. And of course, I'm talking about the video of Rich's final concert. And I can actually remember a friend emailing me the link and asking, hey, have you seen this yet? And I remember watching it. It was late at night, and lights were off, and I'm watching it on my TV, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I I couldn't believe the tape even existed. And I'll never forget this. There was a moment, during the concert when Rich started playing Hard to Get. And I cried. I mean, I just wept. Because to this day, that is my favorite Rich Mullins song. And it's one of my favorite songs, period. And I never thought in my life that I would actually see Rich perform that song with my own eyes. And to find out that this video existed and that none of us had known about it, and it just blew my mind. Fast forward a few years later, Caleb Cruz wrote a book. I read it. It was a great book, and in it he told his story, and the story about meeting Rich, which is of course the name of the book. And in the book we finally learned the story behind that video. And I guess what I'm getting at is the difference between Joe Cook and Andrew Montonera. The difference between you and I think most fans is I was content, just watching that concert and then reading that book. I thought, well, this is great, getting some context. I was very content with that, but not you. And that's what I love about you. And for anybody who knows Andrew, if Andrew really loves something, if he's really captivated by something, he has to know the whole story. And you get to the bottom of it. You're almost like a detective or an investigative journalist. And I absolutely love that about you, because I don't know anybody in just about anything, but especially in Rich Mullins fandom, who's quite as driven to get to the bottom of things like you. So all that to say, where most of us would have thought at the end of the book that, well, that's a great story, it didn't occur to me there was more of the story to tell. But you knew, instinctively you knew there was more to this story, and you wanted to tell that story, and you knew that if given the opportunity, you could be the one to do that. So what about the Cruzes? What about that story drew you in? What convinced you that you needed to tell that story?
Well, first, I actually live in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, and I live about 45 minutes from Elgin, where these events took place. And so I was always kind of captivated ever since I saw all that footage that they had posted, especially the last concert video. And if you watch the video, Peter actually has this description. In the video description is kind of his story the backstory of him telling how this encounter happened at his house. And I was just amazed. And I think Joe, you and I can both agree that really their footage the footage at their house is kind of like the holy grail of Rich Mullins recordings. It's kind of like the thing you never thought would exist, especially so close before his death, that it's almost just amazing that they'd even be willing to share it. And so in about 2015, in 2015, Mitch McVicker was doing a concert at their house. And I ended up going, and I met the family for the first time, and kind of just shared how I'm just as much, I guess just a fan of Rich and his music and how much it's impacted my own life. And we stayed in touch, and in about, I think, early 2017, I had approached them. I had approached Claudia and Leonard, the parents, if I could attempt to make a documentary about their story. And
what was the reaction like when you actually approached them with this idea?
They were like, yes, we're all in. They actually said they'd been waiting. They were I think they were, and now especially too, 20 plus years later, it's almost like they're so removed from the events that people around them kind of forget, like, man, this actually happened. It's almost something it's almost like something out of a Hollywood script. Is this famous musician stays at your house and then dies the night he leaves. Yeah. And how does that affect a family? How does that affect 5 kids? And being a young person person myself. I actually just graduated college back in May, and actually my freshman year, I got into video production, and I'm not a filmmaker by any means, but I thought this would be a cool first attempt to try to share a story that I'm passionate about and try to just use my skills to just grow as an individual and as kind of my own artist. So really, I think any filmmaker or documentary director would have been grateful to have a project like this, a story like this. And as a Rich Mullins fan too, it's something that's kind of skipped over, really. I mean, you hear about it, they were in the Chicago area working on Mitch's album at the time of the accident. But I feel like there is so much more to that. And
well, the big one, is Rich, recorded the Jesus demos in a little country white picket fence church, and you've shattered that illusion.
Yeah, that's always kind of been the false idea, which the Jesus record. Yeah, which the artwork for the Jesus record shows, the church by his home in Bellsburg, Tennessee, where he did a photo shoot in the late 80s, and then after he died, the Ragamuffins did a photo shoot in 98. So that's what's used for, the CDs and
the movie.
The movie is another. It's actually not the same church, but it's another church that looks just like it.
It's identical.
To give that illusion,
yeah.
To give that illusion of Rich recorded demos, in this abandoned church, and it's just not true. I mean, it was at an old Universalist church in Elgin, Illinois, and there's people around him. I mean, there's you even hear it in the demos. You hear the clapping, the
laughing.
Whatever, the laughing, and Mitch McVicker also plays guitar on the last demo, so it wasn't like he was all alone.
Well, you may not be a filmmaker by any means, but you made a beautiful film, and it opens with this wonderful montage, and it's like a journey through Rich's career, and we released that as a music video earlier this week on Ragamuffin Archive, and the song playing during that montage is a relatively unknown Rich Mullins recording, and it also happens to be the title of the film. The song is called "The Work You Began." And so tell us a little bit about that song and why you chose it for the project.
So I've always been a big fan of Rich's early music. Beth Lutz is responsible for preserving dozens and dozens of recordings from the 70s and 80s of Rich's, and a lot of these songs have been unreleased, and I was thinking, what's a way that I might be able to weave one of those songs into the film, if possible, just to have that reach more people. And that's always been one of my favorite songs, and I just thought it worked well. I guess the whole song and the theme of the film is based on Philippians 1:6, where it says, being confident of this, he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. And so I really wanted kind of that theme to resonate, even though Rich's life comes to an end. I mean, it's still, his life has made such an impact on so many people still that it's continuing to this day, and will until Christ returns. So I just thought it would be a good song to choose from. And I thank Beth and Rich Mullins songs for being open to that idea.
All right, we're going to take a moment right now and play that song. This is the title song from Andrew's brand new documentary. It's a demo recorded by Rich Mullins in 1982, provided courtesy of Rich Mullins' early music and Beth Lutz. It's The Work You Began.
far to go, but you're finishing in me the work you began. Sometimes it's hard, but I know everything you are will be finishing in me the work you began. So Lord, be glorified in all that you do in my life. Please, Lord, be pleased with me when life is through. I wanna hear you say, well done in service and faith. And I want the world to see the glory of you. Lord, you know that I've got so far to go, but you're finishing in me the work you began.
The Work You Began, Rich Mullins, and you're listening to Between the Songs. And that song, of course, is the title to the new documentary, The Work You Began, The Last Days of Rich Mullins. And we're talking with the director, Andrew Montonera. For those, again, who don't know Andrew, he's a man after my own heart in that he is an archivist. And, talking a little bit about how passionate you are over the years, you've uncovered some really rare and cool Rich Mullins recordings. Many of them we've released on Ragamuffin Archive. Some of them have blown me away. And so it should be no surprise to me or anyone else that there's some really great footage in this documentary that will likely be brand new to people, including a great performance of You Did Not Have a Home from the Jesus record. Tell me a little bit about that footage and maybe some of the other great stuff that you've included in this that people may not have seen before.
Sure. So first off, the cruises, most of that footage of the cruises at their house and the concert and Rich playing the breaks actually wasn't even filmed by the cruises. It was filmed by a woman named Sharon Henderson, who, if you watch the documentary, you kind of understand her role in it was actually her house, which she then sold to the cruises, and now she lives upstairs because they live in a converted barn, basically. So that's actually all Sharon's footage, or her tape, and it's about 2 hours worth over 3 days. When you see the documentary, you'll see the dates on there, and about, I'd say 95% of that's on YouTube. So there's a few clips in the documentary you'll see at their home that no one's ever seen before, and which I think will be a cool surprise for people who have seen that footage before. And I think it really works well to tie in the stories they're telling. And there's more footage. Joe, you'd mentioned You Did Not Have a Home. So that was done in June of '97, just after he wrote it. And it was actually in Houston, Texas, when Caedmon's Call was filming their cover of Rich's Hope to Carry On. They were filming the music video. And so a good friend of mine, Chris Hauser, he actually was filming just some B-roll footage of Rich and Caedmon's that day. And he ended up getting this great performance of the song, probably the earliest, as far as I know, the earliest recording of it. He I know for a fact he did write it in Texas during that month, and it's just kind of a really cool performance.
And you rode in ashes full. And you spread out the coats and cut down palms. You and the donkey to walk upon. But the world could never find what it wants on the back of an ass's feet. So I guess you had to get sold. But the world can't stand what it can't own, and it can't own you, 'cause you did not have a home. Birds have nests.
But there's also some other songs from like the Jesus record that I feature. There's a video of Jesus and Heaven in His Eyes, both of actually which are on YouTube, but not many people know they exist. So I thought it was really cool to include those, and the people who filmed those allowed me to use those as well. So I think they really tie into Rich's working on this album and writing a lot of these songs he wrote during those months, those last few months.
Yeah, there's in the "You Did Not Have a Home" portion, there's just this almost hilarious moment at the end of it where you get to kind of see Derek Webb turn into a total Rich Mullins fanboy for about a few seconds there.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, that's so amazing or something.
And
I think everyone in that room was just amazed, because Cademans were fans of Rich, and I think Rich was one of the reasons they actually started as a band, was to do Hope to Carry On, and from my understanding.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to give too much away about the film for anybody who hasn't seen it, but some of the best footage, some of the most surprising, cool footage we haven't even discussed. So they just need to go on YouTube and watch the documentary, because it's just some great stuff. So I mentioned I've watched it twice now, and it really is a touching story. It's a beautiful film. But what I think I love the most about it is it's a different story. It's a very focused story. It's about this particular time and place in Rich's life. And it's very different in that regard from the other Rich Mullins documentaries that we've seen over the years. But maybe the most noticeable difference is how you've chosen to distribute your documentary. You've chosen not to make any profit from this film. And, you certainly could have. I say that this is a very professionally done documentary. And the amount of work that you put into this project, and I've seen it firsthand. I mean, you flew out to Window Rock and stayed with our family, and that was more than 3 years ago. And you were working on it and interviewing people during that trip. And
it wasn't easy. To even get half of these people for half an hour, it's not easy. I hope people realize that.
But yet, despite all that work, you released it on YouTube, free of charge. And there's no doubt in my mind that Rich Mullins fans would have paid to see this film. So tell me, why give it away for free?
The simple answer is I didn't pay for any of the music rights. That's the simplest answer I can give. I did, for people who don't know, I did a GoFundMe 2 years ago. I started a GoFundMe. I was trying to get $4,600 to help basically cover the costs of travel and some more equipment to finish this thing. Because I actually had started it at that point. And eventually I realized, okay, I'm not going to get the $4,600, so I think I lowered it to $3,300. And it ended up getting that. And first off, I just want to say on here, thank you to everyone who made a contribution. Whether it was $5 or a few hundred, it allowed me to really make, if I did one really cool thing in my life to create something that I was passionate about, this was it, at least for this time being. And all of you made that a reality. So I know it was $15. I think I had it as $15 gets your name in the credits, but seriously, everyone else, thank you so much. Even if it's not in there, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it. I'm willing to send you a thank you card or whatever you want. but it's really just a passion project. And as a fan too, I think this project culminates my, I'd say 7 years of being a Rich Mullins fan. I mean, it's got never before seen footage, never before heard interviews, all of which are original. I think it's like you said, it's an original story, and I just felt kind of God just, just showing me little signs like, keep pursuing this, go after this. So it's kind of hard to explain, but that's kind of the simple, and it'll reach the most people too. With it being free and on YouTube, it'll reach the most people. So I definitely think it'll be shared around.
Let me ask you, did you have any concerns or reservations while making this film? Because, I mean, as somebody myself who has been an active part in the Rich Mullins fan community for over 20 years now, and on social media, YouTube, for more than a decade, there's certainly no shortage of controversy that creeps up every now and then among the community. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's not terribly hard to piss somebody off when you're talking about Rich Mullins. And this is a guy who I think is certainly viewed as a hero among so many fans. Did you have any concerns that by making this film, you might be kind of opening yourself up to a world of criticism? Perhaps people judging your motives. How do you respond when somebody kind of just assumes the worst without even seeing the film?
I did have several reservations. I think the first one was, what do I call this? I think that was the first. How do I put in a title? Because every film's got to have a title. And so then when I thought, well, The Last Days of Rich Mullins, I have to have that in there because I can't just have The Work You Began. No one knows what that means. And when I was very nervous about that because I know, okay, some people are going to read that and have, hesitations. Because you see all these kind of, documentaries about like, the last days of Michael Jackson, the last days of John Belushi, and, all these kind of tragic but still popular figures in culture that, you almost want to think that there's going to be something largely controversial, like almost even like about his death or something.
Yeah.
Or, it could have been prevented, or I can't believe this happened, or so those were my biggest reservations. I think but once I did the GoFundMe and people really just started encouraging me and thanking me, that all kind of went away. And I accept the fact that some people there's going to be people who think it's a terrible idea to do a documentary like this, but once you watch it, I hope that you realize it's really just kind of a personal story. It's not, it's nothing bad or demeaning or, and then the other part of my hesitation was, am I going to be able to get the people in it that I want? Are these people going to agree to do interviews with me? So I was even just reaching out through Facebook and emails, just asking, hey, I'm doing this project about Rich's last month. Are you okay if I was to interview you? And everyone was very, very kind, and they agreed to do it. I think they saw where my heart lied and the story I was trying to tell, and they were very open to it.
At the end of the day, what is your hope for this film? What do you want people to take away from it after they see it?
I hope people can just maybe discover I hope that people can draw closer to Christ through Rich's words and music. Mitch McVicker, I think, really sums it up well at the end. He says we can look at it from our angle or Rich's, and I hope that people can also kind of, I do hope that people know more in depth of what took place, as much as might seem like it's not necessary. I am kind of, like you said, an archivist, and I just like to preserve those memories. Even though, obviously I left out a lot of stuff. I had to edit this thing. Some people might even think an hour and a half is too long. But at one point I had it at 2 hours, so it's good that I cut it down. But I ultimately hope that they can draw closer to Christ through maybe either re-listening to Rich's music or discovering it for the first time.
The documentary is called The Work You Began, The Last Days of Rich Mullins. It's available now to watch free of charge on Ragamuffin Archive over on YouTube. Andrew, thank you again, and congratulations. It's a wonderful film.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
Once again, you can find Andrew's documentary, The Work You Began, The Last Days of Rich Mullins, on the Ragamuffin Archive YouTube page. And Joe, what's the Facebook page that you can also find Andrew at?
Yeah, it's facebook.com/The Work You Began documentary.
There you go. We want to say a little bit that we do have a few episodes coming up. We like we said before, these are not the main episodes talking about Mullins' albums, but what's one that we have coming up, hopefully in the next couple of months here, Joe?
Well, we are going to have an interview with Mitch McVicker that I think people will enjoy, and
it's more about Mitch's own music. We wanted to highlight him and give him a chance to focus on his own work, the current work that he's doing.
Yeah, and we're gonna focus a lot on his last album, which was released a couple years back, The Acceptance of And, because I know a lot of people over the last couple of years have noticed he's no longer Mitch McVicker. He's Mitchell McVicker, and we're kind of getting into maybe the evolution of Mitch McVicker.
There you go. So, and I've been active over the last few years. If anyone cares to find out, I put out a book on the 12 Days of Christmas, and I have another podcast called Tent Theology, if anybody wants to check that out. Which is fantastic. Yeah. I mean, on a personal note, it's been, the Tent Theology podcast has been a wonderful, wonderful resource for my own personal spiritual life. I can't recommend it enough. Well, we hope. Yeah, I'm one of the co-hosts, but really it's a political theologian that he's written a few books. And you can check it out. Tent Theology podcast. You can find that anywhere. And we just thank you for joining us today. We really value the Rich Mullins community, and so we appreciate your patience. Yeah, you should mention the other project that you've recently been a part of that you've got me addicted on, and it's this mobile game called Drifter that you wrote the music for. I did. I so in a sense, I just released a music project. I have a friend who has started a company, and he's developing iPhone games. And when I say iPhone, unfortunately, at the moment, it's just a game that's for the format of iPhones in the App Store there. But it's called Drifter, Driftr. There's no E in there. And yeah, it's a fun game, right, Joe? It is super addictive. I hit level 35 right before I called you this morning. There you go. So, thank you for ruining my life. Yeah. This isn't going to end well. We're working on ways to make it more addictive. Isn't that great? Yeah. And so, yeah, I did the music for it and the sound effects, and, we're still developing it. And I'm really proud of it and thankful that it's out there in the world. What's funny about it is, I'm a pastor. I've written a book about Christmas. It's on the history of Christmas. Here's a project that there's no spirituality attached to it. There's no big deep message. It's just like, here's some fun synthesizer music. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, and my son got to be on the test team. When it was in development, which was a lot of fun for him.
Yeah, we let you beta test it. That's how, I guess I'm new to this, but that's how we develop games. I guess we let people test it, get some feedback, and all that. So, well, thanks for mentioning it, Joe.
Yeah, it's you've ruined my life. It was worth mentioning. I'm not going to accomplish anything now.
Yeah, that's what we need. We need everybody. We need millions upon millions of people to start wasting their time with our game, and we really actually mean that.
It's a really fun game, though. People should check it out. Drifter, Driftr.
There you go. So thanks again for joining us, and we appreciate you sticking around. Check out the documentary, The Work You Began. Please give it a watch, and let us know what you think. If you have any feedback or any questions for us, you can also find us at Between the Songs on Facebook. Who knows where the Facebook page is?
We have a website, don't we?
We do have a website. BetweenTheSongsPodcast.com.
That's it.
And which has been updated about as much as this podcast. So
you still have like the passwords and everything to go on and get this recording uploaded?
Oh yeah. I have all those passwords.
Oh, good, great. Because I don't.
I do. Yeah. Oh yeah. I can upload. I can get us going here.
All right. Fantastic.
Well, since we established that, thanks for being with us today and listening, and we'll see you next time on Between the Songs.
And Happy New Year.